Hey everybody, happy Monday. Happy Monday and welcome back to Position to Prosper. I'm Arianne. If this is your first time tuning in, say hey and let me know where you are tuning in from. You can also hit my head of security down there at the bottom and share and invite your followers. You can swipe up for Android and swipe left for iPhone. Also, if you want to tune in via your computer, you can do that at periscope.tv. So just want to welcome you guys. Everyone else, welcome back. Hope you guys are preparing for Thanksgiving this week. For those of you who celebrate that, hope you have safe travels, enjoy your families and all of that. I'm looking forward to it. Girl like to eat, so I'm excited. So I hope that you guys enjoy that and keep others in mind too who may not have family or have, this is their first time without a loved one. So let's just keep that in mind too and pray for those who may not be as excited as we are about the holiday season. Okay, so let's jump in. So last week we finished up a series called Beyond Grace, and thank you guys for your feedback and for sharing. It was really good. It was a little bit intense, but it was good, and we need to be challenged so that we can grow. So thank you guys for that. This week we're in a series called Out of Egypt. And Egypt is really just symbolizing something in your life that has been holding you back. So it can be whether it's a relationship or finance or a job or just a mindset, what have you. That is what Egypt represents, something that has imprisoned you. And so as we prepare for the new year, I want to help you guys kind of prepare for when things get hard. Because when you make major life changes, it sounds good, and that first day that you get out, it's like, yes, I made it. And then once you start walking and the thing that you had in mind doesn't show up the very first day or the first week, then you start questioning if you made the right decision or not. Been there, done that, right there. Now, so I want to help you guys. Hopefully you have written down goals. I think we talked about that about 2 weeks ago, to write down goals for the rest of this year and also for 2017. You have got to know where you're going. So it's fine for you to get out of Egypt. That's great. But if you don't have a destination in mind, then you'll just kind of be floundering and going in circles in a wilderness wondering what's next. So make sure that you have a new destination in mind, even though you're trying to get out of Egypt, okay? So let's look at Exodus. I'm not going to read a whole lot. Exodus chapter 16, and I'll kind of jump around a little bit. So just to give you the backdrop, the Israelites had been under slavery under Pharaoh for like 430 years, and then God sends Moses to help them and to set them free. And he goes with his brother Aaron, if you don't know the story, and they get free. And they celebrate at the end, right? They celebrate, and then 3 days into their freedom, they start complaining. Hey Tammy, they start complaining, and they're like, where's our, we want provision, and we want all this stuff that we used to have. And then a month into it, they're like, we should have just stayed where we are. And it's because they haven't gotten used to the new system that they were in. They're so used to being oppressed and having, everything given them at certain times and whatever else, that now that God is their provider, they need to get used to a new system and a new way of doing things. And that's why you've got to renew your mind when you make changes. And it's not easy, it's hard, but it has to be done. And so even though God got them out of Egypt, he had to get Egypt out of them, right? And that's what we have to do too. So even though we get set free from a relationship, a bad one, we now have to get that bad relationship out of us and really assess, okay, what went wrong and what changes am I going to make going forward, and not be so quick to jump into another one just because we get lonely, or if we, leave a job and go to a new one and things start looking like, okay, this isn't what I really signed up for. Like, we have to give it time and process and let it do the work in us before we start giving up and just throwing our hands up and say, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like, it's a process. I mean, they were enslaved for 430 years. Like, you can't just get rid of that in 3 days or 3 months. Like, it's going to take some time. So I want to help you and just let you know that once you get discouraged, I want you to do these 3 things. So that's kind of the backdrop. They start complaining, and then God starts getting mad. He's like, listen, I set you guys free, and now you're out here complaining. And I think he does that with us too. It's like, really? You asked me for this blessing. I gave it to you, and now you're mad and you're cursing it and misusing and abusing it and all that stuff. So we look at them like they're bad kids, but we do the same stuff to God, right? So that's what happens. And then by the end of it, and then they start being disobedient. And we've done that before. It's like, okay, God's going to give you a plan. And then because it's not working out as soon as you want to, we start taking matters into our own hands. And there are consequences of that. And so it's just a mess, but they finally get to their destination at the end. All right, so that's kind of the quick summary. You can go back and read that, Exodus 15 and 16. You can read that yourself, but I'm just going to pull out a few things today to help you. So if you have, when you're preparing to go out into the desert or you're making big changes, I want to tell you to do this. When you start to get discouraged, do this. Always seek the Lord. Seek the Lord first, okay? A lot of times we want to phone a friend and we want to go on social media and everything. No, we have to seek God first. Like, we need to hear his voice first and not everybody else's, and then try to tap his on to the end, because now you really don't know who you're talking to or who you're hearing from. I mean, at that point you've got yourself, you've got the enemy, you've got 10 of your friends, and then you want to tap God's voice on the end, and now you don't know what to think. So you got to seek the Lord first. And so in Exodus 16 verse 8 and 9, when they're complaining, Moses is like, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the morning, meat to eat in the evening, and all the bread you want in the morning. So he's telling them, God is your provider. It's not Moses, it's not Aaron. God is their provider. He said, because he has heard your grumbling against him. So God hears their grumbling. And he's like, who are we? You're not grumbling against us, but you're grumbling against the Lord. So who are we complaining to when we encounter these issues as we're pursuing God? Are we complaining to the right people? So we have to seek the Lord first. In verse 9, it says, then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. So take your burdens and your cares to the Lord first, and then allow God to use the people around you to confirm what he's speaking to you. But don't do it the other way around, because it just makes it very, very hard to comb through it all and figure out what did God say. Like, you got to go to him first. And like, what does that mean to go to God? Go pray. Read your word. Like, what does God say about fear if you're feeling, fearful, or relationships, or whatever the case is? Like, you got to go to his word first and go in prayer, and then allow him to send people to you to confirm what you've already heard or what you've felt in your spirit. All right? So when you're lost in the desert and you're getting discouraged, the first thing you do is seek the Lord. Seek the Lord. And the second thing is this. You got to obey his commands. You got to obey his commands. So God rescued them, and again, he wanted to get Egypt out of them, and so they were going through the desert, and it took them 40 years to get to their destination, and hopefully it won't take us that long because we'll pass the test. But he gave them commands. He was testing their heart, and he's like, no, I'm going to give you daily bread, right? We read that in the prayer, give us each day our daily bread, and God provided for them daily. And he told them, you're not to take this into the next day. I'm going to give you something every single day for that particular day. And some of them, they didn't want to listen, and they tried to take something from today into the next day, and it spoiled. And then another time he told them, he's like, gather twice as much on the 6th day, because 7th day is the Sabbath and they weren't supposed to go out. And somebody else went out and tried to go gather on the 7th day. And he's like, in verse 28, it said, nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. He told y'all not to do it, right? Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and instructions? right? So God, if we say that God is our Lord, we have to obey him and trust him even when we feel like we're lost in the desert or when we're out in the wilderness, and not take matters into our own hands. And if we're seeking him, then we can hear his voice and we can seek him for knowledge and wisdom and instructions to move forward. But we can't get ahead of God because we're being impatient and because we're being fearful. And I'm telling you, like, I have questioned that so many times. I'm like, well, daggone, I could have just stayed. You know, this is not working out as fast as I hope. So I could have just stayed back there. And you start trying to, you know, overcompensate for a lot of things, and you just make it harder than it has to be. So trust and obedience go together. So it's really a matter of trust at that point when we're starting to question and we're starting to disobey God. Do we really believe what he said? Do we really have faith in the promise? And in their case, it was Canaan, the land of milk and honey, but God has plans and promises for us too. So do we really believe that once we get through this, that it's going to be there on the other side? But we got to let him do the work in us right now. So we got to seek the Lord, obey his commands, and the last thing is this: you got to just stick with it. You got to stick with it. Stick with it. So verse 35, they go through all of this, right? And then it says, verse 35, the Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. So they finally got there, but it shouldn't have taken 40 years. It really shouldn't. But God had to do a work in their heart. He had to cut through the disobedience and, you know, their fearfulness and all of this stuff. And I didn't even know this, but there were people that were with them that weren't even Israelites, and they were getting into their heads. They didn't know God. And so they were telling them, you know, stirring them up to go against God. So be very careful who you take advice from when you're going through problems. Because if they don't know your God and they're not in tune with the Holy Spirit, they will just lead you astray, and they'll have God, you know, mad at you, but you got to take responsibility for that. Like, he's mad. God was getting mad. He's like, really? I'm trying to help y'all. I'm trying to help y'all. But when people don't understand what you're going through, like, you be very, very careful who you talk to. Don't talk to 100 people again. I've done it before because you just want answers, right? I just want an answer. I want to know. Like, I do not like surprises. I like things in order. I like details. I want every step mapped out, but it's not that way. It's not that way, because if it was that easy, then you wouldn't need faith. You would not need faith. So you got to just stick with it and trust God. And again, he will give us daily bread. He will give us exactly what we need to get through that day, even if it's one word of encouragement from somebody. I mean, I've had times where I was like seriously ready to just quit. And I'm like, nobody cares. No one's listening. Why am I doing this? And then it'll be one person that day to be like, that was really good. Or thank you for teaching this. And I'm like, okay, that was just enough to make me do it one more day, you know, to get me through that next day. And so God is always providing what I need for that day. Or another time, you know, it could just be a devotion that's like, don't give up or keep going, whatever it is. But it's always that one little thing, that daily bread that he will send to make you remember why you started and to have you refocus on the promise. And so that's why I say you got to seek God first. Seek God first, and then, you know, remember why you started. Obey his commands. Don't get off track trying to do your own thing, trying to speed up your, you know, the process and do it. And, you know, God has his own process. He's not bound by time here on earth, and we just have to trust him. So we seek him, we obey him, and then we just stick with it, knowing that he is faithful, that his promises are true, that he loves us, he will never leave or forsake us. And you just got to speak that word over your life and get your mind right, because you will be tempted to turn away. We will. It's just the fact of the matter. And so I hope that that is helpful for you guys. Again, please make goals for next year. Even if it's through the end of this year, your goal is to spend less on Christmas than you did last year, or you're not going into debt over Christmas, whatever it is. Always have goals and a vision in front of you. But start planning for 2017 now, so that you're ready to go out the gate when January gets here. And I mean, you don't even have to wait for the new year, but we just use that as benchmarks to, you know, start doing some new things. But get ready now. Get your spirit ready now. Get your word ready now. Whatever you got to do, but get your vision in place. All right. Cool. I love you guys. Tammy, it's good to have you on here again, and thank you for the hearts. You guys can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter at Arianne Maccabee. Also, my website is www.ariannemaccabee.com, and you can check out my first book, Destined to Fly, The Pursuit of Purpose. So thank you guys for tuning in. Share and invite your followers. Again, you can swipe up on Android and left for iPhone, and tune in tomorrow. Thank you. I love you too. I miss you. I hope I see you soon. I know you moved. Okay, I'm not gonna talk about that on here, but anyway, I love you. I'll text you. And I hope to see you soon. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.